Morning, councillors. Welcome to our council meeting. I'm giving you the eye. It's no, all good. Okay, we've got a finance and performance meeting today. Apologies. Sandra Faulkner is an apology. Anyone else? Larry Wolf is a leave of absence. So all in favour, I will move the apologies. Seconded by Councillor Sheldrake. All in favour. Contrary, carried. So next we move on, declarations of interest, none. We go to our confidential minutes, which is on page 5. So please take a look at our minutes, and if there are any questions around the minutes, now's your time to speak up. Councillor Seymour.
Happy to move the minutes, but I just think, as I'm always quite particular about reporting, on page 9 and this one's on page 7, and the second bullet point at the top, and the minutes actually record we're unaware that council's role might prevent whānau from gathering on their papakainga. I think we need to be a bit clear about what we're saying there. So what are we actually saying as a matter of long-term record?
Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, that is what was said.
Yes, but there must have been a reason why it was being discussed. Because I mean,
What page? What bullet point?
It's page 7, the second bullet point. And I just think it probably needs another couple of, another sentence attached to it, so we understand what it is we're saying. Because we're talking to a presentation, and these are the response to questions, and I just think it leaves a. Which is not here though. I mean, we don't. If somebody wants to look at it.
Thank you.
Right. And just one further minor correction, Madam Chair. On page 9, on 10.2.5, the last dot point, while it's generally true, it's not correct, absolutely correct. The chair, and this is in relation to the financial report of the District Licensing Committee, the chair and committee fees related to objected licence hearings. That's not quite true, because there is a regular attention by the chair to licences every week.
So should it say chair and committee fees related mostly to objected licence hearings?
Well, no, they actually relate to a service that's provided all year by the chair to attend to, which is, so there's a weekly attention to signing district licences. And then there is the additional objected licences. So it's not like...
Okay, then you need to help me out with words.
Right, chair and committee fees relate to regular attendance on district licensing matters and objected hearings.
Are the committee happy with those words being changed in this draft? Good. Coral, you've got those words. Thanks a lot. Okay.
Thank you.
So I've got a mover for the minutes, Councillor Seymour, and a seconder, Councillor Wharehenga. No more questions. All in favour. Contrary, carried. I move you to the short public excluded minutes on page 11. Moved by Councillor, did I hear Dowsing? Dowsing. Seconded by Councillor Gregory. Any questions in regards to those minutes? If not, I put it to the floor. All in favour. Contrary, carried. We've got the action sheet on page 13. Any questions in regards? Councillor Seymour, action sheet, page 13.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 6, which is the follow-up on the Wainui Bridge graffiti, and we've been hearing about this for a year or more. I just wonder what the status of that is at the moment, please. It's the very last bullet point in the first box under 14.1. Item 6.
Sorry, we'll come back with a...
Chairman of that school committee or something, and last time he reported something would be done about it, but it's awful if the graffiti is still there.
Mr. Wilson.
Through the chair, it sits with Waka Kotahi. We haven't heard back from them. I'd have to get an update at the next RTC.
Thank you.
If I've got no more questions on the action sheet, I take you to our governance work plan, which is on page 14. questions there. Okay, councillors, we're going to jump right to the back of our agenda. I'm welcoming Eloise and Michael here from the Tairāwhiti Museum. We're just going to take a look at that report first. It's page 276. Good morning and welcome. And thank you for presenting your report to us today.
Good morning.
Morning. Any questions? So thank you for a beautiful report with good numbers in there, lots of visits to the museum, lots of Tuia 250 sexticentennial activities. Do you want to say anything or do you just want some questions?
Probably could say something. Really is an opportunity with what's happened with COVID, actually having the time from overseas for almost another 12 months. And really it is a huge attraction for people from out of town as well as the locals. Really. And there's some other things I'm not allowed to say, but that's all right.
Good, only say the stuff you're allowed to say, Michael.
Just want to thank you all very much for your support because it's been a really, really big year for the museum, obviously with Tuia 250 and all of those things going on, and a really disrupted year as well with COVID-19 this year. But when you read through the annual report, you can see that we've actually come out of it in a strong position, thanks to the support of the community, the support of all of you, and the support of the many stakeholders that support the museum. So we met most of our targets that we could despite the disruption of COVID-19. And as Michael said, we are announcing today formally that the Tuti Whaihanga exhibition, we have received that extension of government indemnity from the Minister of Finance. So we're extending that through to next year. So we have another summer with that exhibition here, and we're seeing really strong rates of local visitation from New Zealanders from outside the region, 2 to 3 times what we saw this time last year. And we're carrying on with our schools program and all of those sorts of things we're doing. So we get longer with the taonga here with us. So it's a positive that comes out of the situation we find ourselves in.
Fantastic, thanks a lot for that. And councillors that have not been to see those taonga, they are absolutely beautiful. So make sure you grab your family and go over and take a good look. Any questions, councillors? One thing I wanted to say, I quite liked this, Eloise. It gives you a nice, like a dashboard of what has happened. So it was easy to read.
Great, I'm glad.
And
it was a formatting headache, but I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Made it lovely to read. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I was going to touch on the same thing. In fact, the director's review of the year at the front is excellent. And it's great to see that you achieved so much of your targets in a particularly difficult year, and even getting very close to your visitor numbers when we had such a disrupted year. So well done on meeting so many of your objectives. Thank you.
Councillor Burdick, use your microphone.
Good report. I have one question which concerns us. Are all maintenance needs up to scratch? We had an issue about the roof. Are there any other issues that we should know about?
The roof project patching has been completed, and we are taking a much more proactive approach with council staff to ensure that we are keeping on top of problems when they arise and forward planning some of the things we need to do around keeping things, the structure of the building and council-owned assets like the Star of Canada, keeping them up in top notch. So we're being really proactive about that.
Thank you.
So on behalf of council, thank you so much for a lovely report, but also for the lovely service you offer the Tairāwhiti and the national community, but on our behalf. I was there on Sunday. There's so much to do at the museum. There's so much on. You don't just have taonga that we can look after there. There are also functions. There was a book launch on Sunday. So it's a real community hub. So we do want to congratulate you from council and from the GDC. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I just want to quickly say, if any of you haven't been to see the exhibition, you're very welcome to give me a call. I'm very happy to give you a tour. And if you've got visitors from out of town or any, that you want to bring through and you want a private tour with them, just let me know. I'm very happy to do that to do that for you.
That's great. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
So councillors, I take you to page 277 on my agenda. Moved by councillor Cranston, seconded by councillor Dowsing. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. So I've got a leave of absence for councillor Foster. Moved by councillor Seymour, seconded by councillor Bedit. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. No acknowledgements and tributes that I'm aware of. No public input and petitions. No extraordinary business. Notice of motion. So we move straight to page 15. So you'll see we've got a big agenda today, but some of them are more just noting reports like the LGFA report, which we're going to take a look now on page 15. If I can take you all to page 15. Pauline, do you want to say a few words? And then if there are any questions, councillors can.
Thanks, Chair. No, there's probably not an awful lot, but just to say, one part of this is just the normal BAU stuff, which is getting a proxy and for decision making in the annual general meeting. But the second part is everything that relates to a change in the foundation documents needs to come back for a council to be aware of those changes in policies. And there's just two changes into that foundation policies. It doesn't actually reflect too much on us, and the risk is actually low because we have our own treasury management to do those. And it's just saying they've moved away from their original 12 months cap on how loans were to be released, to say that it's moved away from that now, and essentially the liquid assets. They need kind of a little bit more where they are at the moment, but the risk to us is low for those changes in the foundation policy, and it actually makes sense.
Moved by councillor Dowsing. Who'd seconded? Councillor Bedit. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. I take you to our report on the purchase of Bank Street, page 30. Thank you, Pauline.
For the chair, so I take most of it as read and take any questions, but basically as part of the review that we would look at where our purchases, where they lie, how do they relate, is it actually the most effective vehicle for anything being held, and this was part of this review of why we actually were saying what does it mean if we continue on that GHL own it, or we purchase it from GHL, or is there a temporary measure? But I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Councillor Robinson.
Thanks. For some reason, Untitled Chapter has not shown any of my notes from last night. I'm gutted. So on this one, my question was, the paper explores thoroughly an option of purchasing the land, but then the paper talks, and it does the little table of the maths, but then the paper talks about the impending potential regional water relationship issue. Now, my mind is like, okay, if council-owned assets are somehow going to be drawn in by edict from government into that pool, and we own that land, might that be sucked in? Whereas if our CCTO owns that land, we might then get compensation for that because it's an external commercial entity. And therefore I was leaning in my thinking at this point towards option 3, which was take a watching brief to see what happens because the National Water Regional Dudeki is still unraveling, and then we could make the call at that time, because it might be much more financially in our interests actually to not own it, own that whenua. That was my notes. I wish I could. Can you get that?
Through your worship, I think that point, it surmises a few things in terms of that bullet point around whether that's a benefit or not to move back to council. If there were to be any assets acquired by central government, there would be a negotiation process, irrespective of whether it's sitting within council or the CCTO, essentially being council as a group. So I think that in terms of decision making, that is it's maybe it's a benefit, but I wouldn't hang my head on it as being an ultimate decision maker in this particular paper. For that point being that there would be lengthy negotiations as to what goes in and what goes out, recognising that the CCTO is part of the council group.
Thank you. Councillor Seymour and then Councillor Worsnop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move the paper, but I just had one question. It's slightly related, but not to Councillor Robinson. And I think the Chief Executive may have just answered my question to myself when I was reading this. Can it be purchased out of the 11 million that we've got at the moment to investigate our river?
The Three Waters money.
Yes.
So through your worship, no, I understand that we've got I know we have a programme of work that we have submitted in that outlines what we're going to be applying that money to, and we did not put the purchase of the land in that programme of work. And it has to be for work, for employment opportunities.
Right, thank you.
Okay, I have a mover in Councillor Seymour, a seconder in Councillor Badet. Who put their hands up to speak? Councillor Worsnop.
In option one, it doesn't specify the fact that the lease payment will also come from rates. So I'm assuming that that is the case.
Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. Completely agree with the requirement for the need for this land. My questions are around whether this is the most advantageous way to transfer the land. Is there potential that as a transfer of asset to council, they would then have a loss on the balance sheet, which would be offset in taxes? I'm not entirely sure if that would work for a property transfer, but I just want to know that this is the most functional way to attain the asset. And the other part to that is, are we better carrying the debt here or asking GHL to carry the debt? We may just request that they transfer and understand that it's going to be a loss on their balance sheet this year.
Ms. Foreman.
There's a couple of things, and that's kind of around that third option, which was the things that may be in the wings. If there was a water reform, what does that actually do? What would it do if we decide to say that there was some other structural changes or transferring to and from assets, and do you actually sum them all up and do the transfer with it or not? The issue with that is there's delays of waiting for that decision to be made. And while there are impacts over that decision, there's one, is it actually even better when it comes at the end of the day? Because you'll have to have the sale and purchase will have to be based on a market arm's length transaction. So that goes by the by. But you could say overall, there could be a transactions we trust and change values in purchase price. That still can happen if we do later on in making those adjustments to final share prices. So what this saying at this point in time, there is an asset that they own which they have limited ability to add value to. And what that does, if there is a temporary situation, they have to have arrange interest rates and higher loan agreements, which are not advantageous if it was a long-term arrangement. So where we enter into things, if things change, we can review that, but we're saying at this particular point in time, if the basis, the land is under an asset which they cannot add value, that's the first main part. The secondary is looking at it as a sort of a tax perspective as well. So but the primary is, do they add value and can they add value? And it's a passive, only a passive investment. So that it stacks up that it says it probably doesn't, it's better that we purchase that. Secondary, as we go on, there'll be part of another bigger discussions of how we can do that and how do we look at our things going forward. But effectively for the short term, it makes sense. It still stacks up for us to purchase it.
Councillor Akuhata Brown. The microphone is saying no, Meredith. No.
I'm just wanting to ask a dumb question maybe, but it says on point 19.
For the chair, I guess it was to make sure that in both cases, if we've got a lease arrangement, we have to pay for it, but it'll be slightly more for rates as well as so it's still saying it's still going to cost us money under this. It doesn't diminish to if we have to pay a lease, but in overall that rates and payment will be less than what it would be under a lease arrangement. So yeah.
Okay, councillors, if there are no more questions, right of reply, Councillor Seymour. Microphone, please.
This makes sound commercial sense in terms of, if you look at, it aligns with the current ownership arrangement where all the land and buildings of the existing wastewater treatment plant is owned by council.
Thank you, Madam.
That's, council has control. I mean, that's a critical asset.
Thanks for that. Councillor Seymour, right of
Yeah,
reply.
thank you, Madam Chair. Just in my right of reply, I did want to draw councillors' attention to option 2C, where, and it's partly been reiterated by Pauline just now, that the cost of the interest and principal will still be lower than any charges were it to be leased. So that answers the query that one or two people have had. Thanks.
All in favour, contrary, carried. Councillors, we move to page 134, which is our stock standard financial report that we receive in our Treasury report, the next one. I take this as read. What did I miss? What page? Oh my goodness, I thought we already moved this. So this is in regards to the report we had earlier. This is just the LGFA a report for the year. So it's quite a chunky report. It covers also nice visuals in there, but it's a noting report. Do I have a mover for that report? Moved by Councillor Seymour, seconded by Councillor Dowsing. Any questions? I don't think so. All in favour, contrary, carried. So then we move to page 134, which is our financial reporting. Thank you, Pauline, for a thorough notes. I really enjoy the notes that you share with us because it clarifies what goes on the spreadsheets. Any questions, councillors? We are looking at our report, the 10-page report, just with our normal every month summary of our finances. Councillor Seymour.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question on page 140 with respect to non-current liabilities under the emissions trading scheme, and the note 17 gives an explanation, but I just wanted to know, have we sold forest credits that have created this liability, and where did they arise from? Did they arise from Palmore? I'd like to know a bit more about them, please.
So two things within the difference is that the budget is set mostly for what was in the LTP. So what this actual is, whatever the valuation was at the 30th of June 2020 will have an increase in value. So that's just a reflection of the value and the market values of a change. So the budget was probably back, most of that would have been associated with the LTP itself. Started that process, it reviews a little bit what those estimations were. So that's just actually a reflection of the market movements, and we have not sold any.
I'm still confused why we've got a liability if we haven't sold any.
Oh, so so our recognition of how we do it, we recognise that there's an asset, and then we recognise there's a liability, and the liability is the valuation of the forest is at that particular time, but in order to, if you have a value of that forest, it means that you actually have to harvest it. So there's a liability at the same time, because you have to then pay back the carbon credit. So we recognise an asset and a liability. The difference between the two is really actually the standard stock carbon credits, which is about 120,000. So it is only that net difference that you actually reflect.
Thank you. Any more questions in regards to our financial report?
Supplementary, Madam Chair, I do have one on page 142, and it's really small dollars, but and there's no explanation. It's around the district library operations, and it reads like it's nearly to the bottom of the page, below number 13 in the notes, but it doesn't have a note. And where we thought the budget was 100,000, we're at 26. I mean, you'd think the library's been closed for half the time for the operations to be so much less than budget.
It was closed for half the time. It was closed for half the time for COVID.
Is that the explanation?
I'd have to find out. It's probably the timing of the first quarter of what they've actually got, and some of the things they may have more electronic purchasing. So I just need to see what it
shows
is.
it's functioning at only 34% of budget. Percent of it.
Yeah, it's probably just the first quarter, and some of the phasing of the budgets associated with it may have been higher, but we can actually come back on that and have the note of the next one.
Thank you. And a third question, Madam Chair, on page 244 with respect to items 12 and 13, community property management and pool operations. So we've got both two items there, and I just wondered why they were separated, because the pool is referred to in community property management under the redevelopment project of 4.9 million, and then the year-to-date spend on the operations, it says here, is nil. So I was just wondering why they're pulled out and reported separately, because in actual fact the pool is part of the community property management.
Well, it was trying to separate the operations of the pool, what the normal repairs and maintenance that's needed for it, as opposed to the major project for the redevelopment. And so that was why it's been separated.
Thank you.
Yep. Can I add through your worship, the activity report for the quarter on cultural activities outlines the rationale as to why the capital expenditure is behind on budget for the library, which is particularly around phasing, but also books being put on hold due to overseas restrictions in terms of arriving here. So at the end, it's saying we'll expect to be on budget.
Thank you for that. Councillor Warsnop.
So if you're looking on 146, there's, and I'm just making sure that I'm understanding the question that you're asking. The row at the top of the graphs is the spends per month, and it looks like that there is a, so the spend for the month of September is lower than the others. But if you look at the cumulative one down below, it says, okay, this is the spends for the first quarter, and you can see it's just in the month of September that was down, and Dave can probably explain exactly what it is, but it's just where things have been going out and the timing of it.
Thank you. No more questions? Do I have a mover and a seconder for this paper? I have Councillor Seymour and Councillor Warsnop. Oh no, they didn't move it, they just had speaking terms. Do you have a question? Councillor Dowsing.
Just on our, just on page 145, and obviously amazing work to see us tracking so well against our capital expenditure target. My question is it highly unrealistic that we're going to get up to $90 million worth of capital expenditure? I know it's, you know, I know that there's funding there and it's come in, but it's
See, your microphone just died. Our microphones are playing up a little bit today. That's all right. No, just started flickering. Mr. Wilson, the floor is yours.
So through your worship, we're confident we're keeping tracking the way we are. The teams are in place, so we have got the work program and the resources sitting in behind it to keep continuing delivering as we are.
Yeah, I guess my question is more around the risk to the organisation with having such a big burden in capital projects, dragging our staff out of, or, focusing our staff on that work versus our operational.
Mr. Wilson.
So through your worship, we have split the hubs. So Lifelines and Livable Communities are both split into operational and capital delivery teams. So the operational teams don't deliver major capital works at all. We have separate teams that deliver our capital works program for us. So operations will only spend up to about $300,000 on a CapEx project before it flips over to infrastructure. And they have the machine that's wound up to deliver this capital work that sits in front of us. Deliberately separating OPEX out means that our staff are 100% working on compliance with regulations, with standards and those things. They don't deliver capital.
Thank you.
And I do want to congratulate staff. Never in my time at the GDC have we seen, we've always seen about a 60% completion of capital work. So I do want to extend on behalf of councillors to staff as well for the massive amount of capital work that is happening around our region. If we've got no more questions, do I have a mover for this report? I think Councillor Burdett moved it. Councillor Wharehenga second. All in favour? Contrary, carried. I take you to page 147, our Treasury report. Councillor Worsnop.
Does someone from the Audit and Risk Committee sit in on those meetings, or are they achieving by staff only?
Staff only, because it's operational, that the monitoring of those, the reports and things. So at the moment, the Treasury report comes to the financing performance. So this is the report that we brought up to governance, and we do all the measures. So in behind our Treasury monitoring, you have a lot of benchmarks that you actually have to meet. And that's the reporting of it. So why it's quite technical, and each of the things, are we doing our interest rate swaps, is the loans, where they are at maturity of them, how they're falling, and it's saying, are we in policy, are we are not. That's our reporting back up to the council level, the governance level, to say, are we in policy and how are we doing?
So there's not a more regular report. My second question was on page 151 around the council's interest rate risk policy, and just around what the I understand the bands, minimum, maximum, and then we've got actual. What are the percentages of, given that they don't add to 100? Is it just because we can't actually add? So I'm just trying to interpret it, and I didn't manage to interpret it. So if you could just tell me how I should interpret that.
So what it says between the different years, that we need to have, of our total loan portfolio, we need to have cover of swaps, so interest rate risk, to mitigate that. And so within those bands, it says you need to have a sort of a minimum of 55% coverage for whole portfolio, and then you have a maximum. So you don't want to overhedge your risk portfolio, but you want to actually be within those bounds. And then they say, okay, these are the years out based on when the loans that you're forecasting would be due on your long-term plan.
So it's interest rate cover, not exposure. So it's not the, yeah, no, I understand.
Okay, any more questions? Councillor Dowsing.
Oh, my microphone's working. Look at it go. My question was on page 152 and our interest rate benchmark. It's apparent we're not seeing the benefits of changes in the market as our benchmark falls away. We're deviating from it quite significantly. Is that a policy? Is that our policy causing that deviation, or an appetite to go closer to some of the maximum thresholds or minimum thresholds in our policy?
So there's probably some, just explaining that graph, on, as you say, on 152. So on the first one, there's a yellow line, and the yellow line, which you can see is at 5 point, was over probably 6%. Yes, it was 6%. And that 6% was a function of the LTP 2015 LTP. And then we see it going down because interest rates were going down to what we had in the last LTP was 5%. And I know you know that, but I'm just trying to explain for perhaps some of the others that's just taking them through it. The red line is what actually is the market saying. And in between the interest rate and the black line, that is saying our basket of costs. What is it we've got? So because we have to have covers, interest rates covers for loans that are maturing at different levels, and we've taken them on at different times. So they might be quite old loans 5 years ago, and then you've got them close to now where the interest rates are a lot lower. And because they were probably quite high when we purchased those loans and we did them, so we had their baskets to sort of dollar cost average, if you like, we can see it going down. So the next part of that question is, what is our new benchmark for the new LTP? So we would be assuming that it is lower. So we're asking PwC, can you model based on what are the basket of loans that you may need to do in the future? What have you got, and when are they coming due? And at the moment, that rate will be lower than what we've got at the 5%, but just what that is, depends on how much we will draw down and when we need to draw down and what it goes. But effectively, our cost, if we got a fixed rate loans, that's not a problem, that they are quite low. They're about, and I think we had 5 million fixed loans that we had taken up, and they were at around 1.98 and 1.99%. But because the policy and the guidance for best practice for council is that you should have a floating and a fixed rate, because you get too much, you have overcommitted your loan portfolio with it. So that's one of it. The second part of it is that anything that you take floating loans, they have to be having our policy of taking out swaps to mitigate that risk of the loans fluctuation. And that's the cost that you'll get added on to the interest-based interest rates of, at the moment, it's probably about now 1.4, 1.5. And so that's the other basket of interest rate costs.
I guess I'll ask my question in a slightly different way then. No, it's all right. It's a good explanation of how we structure, and that's fine. What I want to see is the ability to take advantage of the current market, and it's obviously dropped away significantly over the last 2 years, and we can see it still trending down. Is our policy allowing us to take advantage of that in the near future? Are we going to see our average rate drop, or is the policy and the best practice, which is relevant to previous global scenarios, not current, but is it not allowing us to take advantage? Can we expect to see lower average rate interest rates in future years as some of those longer term loans drop off?
The quick answer is it will never ever reflect what you're available at the market rates at that particular point in time. And that is because your risk exposure of interest rates needs to be mitigated by taking swap rates to mitigate that risk and exposure if interest rates do go up. And so based on that and based on increasing needs that we will need to draw down on loans, you need to have a policy that is actually going to mitigate those risks or fluctuations of market rates if interest rates do go up. So yes, it's lower now, but if interest rates go up in 2 or 3 years' time, and we haven't structured our loan portfolio to the extent that allows us flexibility and have coverage to mitigate the fluctuation in interest, you could be in the exposure to when we were doing scenarios for the LTP, if interest rates went up 1% or 2%, we actually saw that the rates increases were quite significant. They went up probably 2 to 3% depending on the scenario. So this is trying to take the basket of what we actually have and working with where we move into different realms to mitigate that risk always for the future, not just for today.
Thank you. Anyone else want to ask a question? Okay, Councillor Warsnop, last go.
Thank you. So just again on that graph, since roughly 2019, we've been much less volatile in terms of our actual interest rate. Have we adopted a stance that is hedging more, is using more reliance on swaps? We've taken out some of that volatility that we saw prior to roughly the middle of 2018, but we also seem to have lost the responsiveness to dropping markets as dropping interest rates, as you pointed out. Because if you look in the 16 to 18 period, even though we had a higher budget interest rate, we actually did see a decreasing trend during that period of time. So that's just where I sort of feel like this is a little bit too high level, and I think it's probably quite important that somebody, hopefully a handful of somebody around this table has a better handle on our feelings in this area relative to, I think, what you can get from having it at this committee at this level, because it's pretty critical. It's a huge amount of our, there is a high amount of risk, or we mitigate that obviously, but it's pretty critical to our operation, and particularly when you look at our budget and get what that's potentially going to do in the next few years. So yeah, that's just some feedback on that.
So just things to come back with it. We do have PwC come and they check in at least once, if not twice a year, and they actually say, what are the markets doing? They will give a presentation and they'll give you additional oversight. Yes, they come directly to, usually it's, but it can go to the audit and risk, or it can go to the as a whole. Because you're right, it is an important aspect that needs to be managed and maintained. Some of the things that you were talking about and why there was fluctuations, on page 150, we have to have the maturity profile of when the loans are due. So you can't have all your loans due in the one. So basically, those older loans, which had higher interest rates, were causing some of those higher fluctuations in earlier stages. Now we're moving it down because some of them are due, they've been turned by new interest rates. And so that's why you've got differing rates in there.
Thank you. So I've got a mover in Councillor Seymour. Do I have a seconder for this page? Councillor Dowsing. So we're on page 147. Our Treasury report, all in favour, contrary carried. So councillors, now we move to a big report. I will give you the opportunity. If there are some comments you want to make, which can be an email, please use that facility. Otherwise, if you want to ask some high-level governance questions in regards of trends or what is happening, this is the place for it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break it down in chunks. So we have 6 areas which we are going to cover. So make sure if you've made notes, you stick to the areas that I open up for discussion. So first of all, we're going to talk about the first resource concepts. Thank you, Helen. Thank you for joining us. Do you want me to open the whole environmental service and protection area, or do you want to quickly go through each? Can I open up the whole environmental service? So this will be from page Yep. If you've got any questions, then now is your time, and I'll let you know from what page to what page that was. So that is from the first page of the report, which is page 157 to 185. So that is our first section on environmental services and protection. Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. Just a point of clarity, first of all. I didn't know how to read that first graph, the budget threshold key. The one that's 95 to
bottom one.
105%.
The green bar,
It
which
appears,
shows you how you, can you just explain this? Helen?
Yep.
Pauline, thank you.
So what that's saying is they've got different thresholds. And so they say that if revenue is less than 95%, it's showing up as a red. If it's kind of yellow, it's nearly between the 95 to 97. And then obviously from there on, it's a green. And operating expenditure.
so why is it a green from there on? I don't understand. So if it's saying it's off track at under 95%, how can it be on track at 105%?
So the assumption is that if you've got more income, it's better.
So you read each of these individually. So it's an individual line, the revenue line,
Yeah.
you read that.
It's favourable. It's better than, you've got more income than what was said the budget, you're actually favourable. If it's saying operating expenditure, you're within budget up to 100%, you're okay. But you go over that, it's starting to say different parameters, warning.
Makes more sense now? Not yet?
No,
We'll
not
get
yet.
there.
I'll look at it some more. I'll let
That's
some
all
questions
right.
go.
Okay, so any questions around this first bit? Councillor Seymour.
I just, the context of that one, we'll have to observe though, if you look at the second line, I mean, I get what you're telling us, and I did get that, but on greater investigation, surely a deficit if it isn't still green, if you look at the second line, I mean, a surplus is a benefit if you've gone to 101 or 105, but you've got bracketed with a deficit, which you would think might not be a good thing.
I think it's just terminology. It's, as you say, you could say surplus because you'll see the lines that actually go through. But I understand what you're saying, yeah.
We're analysing. Yeah. I mean, Madam Chair, while I'm speaking. I was just going to observe, and I mean, there's no point in getting into it because we know we're trying to do something about it. But there are a number of elements within those first sections that we aren't able to meet our target for a variety of reasons.
Councillor Seymour.
I mean, like shortage of staffing and delivery of liquor licenses and all those kind of things on time. I mean, manager certificates happen, but premise licenses don't happen. And there are quite a few red boxes through here.
Yes, so you will all hopefully remember the deep dive we did on resource consents. And so that will hopefully have answered a lot of the questions that you might have had in relation to that section. You are correct. As you know, we've been having some staffing issues in relation to our liquor and health licenses. It is an area of focus for us, and we have some consultants in helping us and doing some really good work in that space to lift that performance.
Thank you for that reassurance. Councillor Gregory.
Thank you. I'm just going back to that key on page 158. Under activity summary, there's the on-track monitoring, off-track, and then progress, performance, yellow and red. What? I don't.
So Pauline, can you talk about this, the bottom one that Shannon asked a question about again? Can we maybe just have a quick,
It's the top bit
the top bit, which right underneath the activity summary in the middle of page 158. Can you just talk us through those indicators?
So probably need to explain the key going forward, as opposed to assuming that people have inferred meaning from it over the last 12 months.
We have discussed this before. Pauline has taken me on a course through it.
Essentially saying that second, it's probably misleading in terms, well, not misleading, but that's why the question is coming. That second box in terms of progress and performance is around how you're tracking overall. So it's a high-level summary of the activity for that quarter. So where it's the performance is red, that's saying it's off track.
Is that what you were after?
It's not a key.
Just the microphone. Good.
It's not a key that we.
Councillor Worsnop.
Thank you. This is kind of my area, so if you with me, I've got. So under resource consents, we've obviously got the revenue and whatnot. Somewhere in there.
Just share the page with.
Is 159. Where does the $110 fee fit into revenue? And like correct, and that if that's over 10,000 fees, that it's $1 million. The next question was.
Let it just answer that first. So the $110 fee is the resource consent fee that we have received quite a bit of feedback on.
So it doesn't sit under resource consents, it sits under monitoring. And it's basically our maintenance fee of that resource consent. So in the monitoring area, obviously once a resource consent is granted, it goes to the monitoring space, and the monitoring team have to administer all of those, set them up for monitoring, decide whether they need a physical site visit or whether they are just the receipt of information. Sometimes that can be water takes or effluent disposal fields, etc., where we just get information from the landowner about whether the field or the take is operating correctly. So that's yes.
Right. Okay, found you. Cool. Yep.
Okay, next question.
Next question. Sorry. So just to build on that, under enforcement, we are under our 1.1 million budget, which if the sum total of what that is gathering is $1 million, that doesn't seem to marry up. Sorry.
No.
Okay, all right, moving on.
Next question.
The online portal, is that, I know there's a lot of emphasis on the pre-consent meetings. How are the online portal tracking, I suppose? Are you still getting the engagement of the pre-consent meetings using people using the online portal? Or is that prohibit slightly the face-to-face that alleviates a lot of the problems thereafter?
So the online portal is active for building consents, and usually the people who are using the online portal are our frequent flyers. So architects who do a lot of work with us, drafts people that do a lot of work with us. So they're quite familiar with the process. In saying that, if they have questions before they lodge those applications, they still come and meet with us, and they're still encouraged to do that.
Next question.
I've raised this before. I don't believe that our project should be recorded under region-wide pest control. It's specific to a project that should be captured within the project. It's not being applied regionally. So just in terms of the fact that that's still coming up in our reporting, when it's confined to what is a project or ours, that if you really don't have access to. That's probably my question, sorry. And in terms of the monitoring, is there a threshold? I've been getting a bit of feedback lately around things that apparently council has been contacted and they know about, particularly in relation to dumping things like tyres or in one case, look like concrete or something. And I've forwarded this stuff through, but is there a threshold beyond which we know that it's simply a liability that's going to sit with us and we're unlikely to recoup costs?
All the time.
How are we, I know that we already have a lot of pressure on this area of our resources. Are we able to fully follow up all of those concerns, and what might be hindering us from doing that? Certainly seems to be some perception at the moment.
Just a bit of clarification. Are you talking about reactive or
Somebody
unreactive?
puts in an RFS and
So we respond to all RFSs in relation to, things that have gone on in the community, provided obviously we have a location where that's happened and we can go out and find it. Sometimes people are a bit vague and it's really hard to go out to a place or a road without knowing, how far along, etc. But we always go out and investigate those things.
Okay, thank you for that. Any more questions? Councillor Dowsing.
Thank you. It's a difficult pill to swallow, some of the red dots in the resource consenting area, but those were where my questions sat, particularly around so two questions. The first is based around the less quantity completed in the same time frame as falling off, so we're not completing as many, and that leads me to think, and I'd imagine at this time we're probably receiving more applications than before too. So we're probably getting a lot of these applications kicked down the road a little bit. So my question is, how often is the sort of additional requests for information the cause for these things extending their time period and lasting much longer than they should, or staying in the system longer than they should? And the reason I ask that is because I want to understand whether there's enough upfront information or enough guidance for people to be submitting everything we need. And then the next part of that question is, are we then not seeing the true nature of these outcomes in our performance stats? For example, if we're receiving lots of requests, if the clients are receiving lots of requests for information on the 20th day, and then we extend our time frame with that request, how often is that happening, and is it giving us a falsehood in our performance stat measurements? I can only imagine it's happening, because if we're delivering less in the same time frame, then actually we should be dramatically.
So best practice is that you get one request for information if it's necessary. We do try to provide the people putting in the applications with a lot of guidance and direction. There's a lot of information, brochures, etc. out there. It's hard to be 100% specific unless you have pre-application meetings, or you get a copy of the application or their draft application before it comes in, to have no requests for further information, especially on complex consents. Little consents go through relatively quickly. As you'll remember from the deep dive, some of the issue that we have been facing and are working very hard on to address is the reference to our experts. So obviously we get a resource consent in, and it goes out to the various people, either within or external to council, who provide technical input and technical questions. And sometimes that's not coming in a timely way. So we're working really hard with those partners to speed up their timeframes.
Great, and that leads on to my second question, which was that it's highlighted in here that we're not doing the user journey design that we'd kind of discussed in the past, which is looking at our process from the client's point of view. We haven't been able to progress that work. And I question then, if we're seeing these issues and compounding problems, is that not the place we start, is to understand the user journey versus understand or combat our internal difficulties? Should we not be making sure that everything is coming in the door and people are having these pre-consultation meetings, and we design the process around that to make it easier for both parties?
So previous investigations into the consumer journey have led us to the conclusion that timeliness and cost effectiveness are the two most important things. So while we haven't done a dive into that this year, we know that those two things are the most important things that we're dealing with and trying to address through our process, improvement process that we're going through. That improvement process is quite time consuming and does take up a lot of the the time, obviously, as does build capacity and retaining staff and all of those sorts of things. So it's a matter of resources. So there's no point at the moment going back and looking at something where we know there is a problem until we've fixed the problems that we know we've already got. Does that make sense?
It does, but it seems a little bit of, it seems a little bit definition of madness. It seems like we're doing the same thing over and expecting different results. The timeliness and cost are obvious motivators, but they're by no means a they're by no means a lever or a trigger or anything that we have any effect on. So from my point of view, and this was the desire of council some time ago, and we've had this conversation many times, is that we would like to have an understanding of the single point of contact and and sort of the process that the applicant goes through to be able to navigate the waters in the most efficient way, so that we get the right information and they get the right service. And by doing so, we should see better results. But at the moment, if we just are working within our current parameters and trying to get more efficient within them, we're not making changes and we're not making advancement.
Thank you, Mrs. CEO.
Thank you, through your worship. It's a complex issue, and the more we have worked to try and address the problems that we have identified in terms of that, the more complex it gets, recognising the various parts that goes into making up the consent process and making it user-friendly, right from the very big start of your district or your unitary plan. So if that was simplified, there would be less time required for our staff to interpret the rules, be risk averse in that process, etc. We also are running alongside this a stream around co-design with Iwi, as they too have expressed concern around the additional work that's required for them to input into consents. That takes time, and it's the same staff that get drawn on that. We also know we've been trying to backfill a number of staff roles, all of which takes people away from processing their work as well. So we're trying to find that sweet spot around being able to maintain and make some improvements, incremental improvements, but we've got the same resources and we've got additional work on top of that that's coming in terms of co-design that is going to likely be put in legislation as the forms change through. So it's, as I say, it's complex. The team have a program that they're trying to put in place, committed to improving that customer process and the customer journey. For example, this afternoon we've got a stakeholder meeting with the sector around what some of the changes are that they need to be aware of in terms of consenting processes. So that's all part of it, but it is a journey that we're on and committed to doing that. But we just need to recognise that it requires resource prioritisation, and I think what the team are doing is working the best that they can do to try and manage the multiple issues.
So supplementary, what support is the Chief Executive seeking from Council to make some inroads into all of those difficult issues you've mentioned? Because if it's, I'd love to see a short, medium, long-term plan on these are the highlight points that cause us the most problems. Let's tackle this one immediately and kick the rest down the road because it'll make the most difference.
It's more about understanding, having an understanding and appreciation for the resources that we currently have, what we're trying to, so it's not about more money at this stage, and you'll see it will be next year, for year one of the LTP, because this is about getting people to do the work, but having the insight that Helen's shared with you in terms of the deep dive and recognising that it's not something that we can just automatically flick a switch on and that we will be able to completely transform the way that consents are processed in the immediate term. It's about the support that's required as an appreciation and understanding of the complexities involved and the scarcity of resources where every planner is in hot demand around New Zealand
Thank you for that.
this time.
Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I recently went through a resource consent process myself, and it was contracted out and the work was done by WSP. Can you tell us, is that standard? How much is the current budget for contracting out external work as happened with my resource consent application? Is there a budget for that? And are we over budget on that? Because obviously the operating expenditure is way over budget here.
It is fairly standard at the moment. About a certain percentage of all consents go out. Yours in particular will have gone out because you are a councillor, and so we manage conflicts of interest in that way. So whether it's real or perceived, we have to manage it by putting it out to a consultant. So it happens quite frequently. Yes, we are over budget in the use of consultants. However, the use of consultants is one of the things that is charged back on a cost recovery basis to the applicant, provided the consent obviously doesn't go over timeframes.
Anyway, let's stay focused, please. Thank you. We are moving on.
So sorry, supplementary question. What is you said a percentage is contracted out to WSP, say. What is that percentage of overall applications? And what is the budget that is associated with that? It has been attached to that, and where are we sitting at with that budget? Numbers.
I'd have to go away and get you those numbers. I don't have them off the top of my head.
Hey, no, I just. Helen, sorry, you just mentioned that due to managing those conflicts because is that standard process? So because I've had a process go through too, and I was just thinking, oh, where did that go? But so that's a standard practice for us also. Community can be made aware, councillors don't get any kickbacks or any of that. Kia ora.
Okay, people, I'm going to move swiftly to the next one. Mr. Cranston.
Page 171, animal control. As councillors, we're often told when we get an issue that we advise people to put in RFSs. There was an issue of dogs charging actually on our walkway. They were charging cyclists, and the RFSs went in, and there was a couple of them went in, and I got a call to say that process was fine, but there was no follow-up of that. They don't know what happened afterwards. So I would have thought part of the process would have been to respond to those RFSs. Just need to have that follow-up.
I think the RFS will say whether the person wants to be followed up or not, so I can have a look into those in particular and find out if they had that notation on them that the person wanted to be contacted and whether they were or not.
Thank you. Last question, Councillor Seymour, and then we move to urban stormwater.
Season here that the memorandum of understanding with the LPFA/Kairāwhiti Road is still pending the outcome of the separation of the two entities. Well, seriously, that happened ages ago, and I'd like to know that's not the reason it's stalled.
What page was that on, Pat?
175.
175. Can someone please take a look at that? Thank you. Yep. Good.
And we need to make them more accountable for the leads and keep on the state highway.
Okay. Quick Smart.
Thank you. It was just on the enforcement space, and I was wondering if our harbour masters' activities should appear in there, particularly around the inner harbour swimming and that kind of thing that we've discussed in previous meetings.
What page, Councillor?
Oh, sorry, it was in enforcement attachment 3. I didn't think I saw it, but.
So just an update is that council is being very proactive this summer, that we sometimes have issues with young kids enjoying our rivers, but then jumping into the areas that are not safe around the inner harbour. And we have a joint agreement with our Māori wardens this year, and they started early November, and they will be there moving people that are in those dangerous spots just onto other areas in our river, because we have heaps of areas that kids and adults alike can enjoy. So I look forward to us working shoulder by shoulder with our Māori wardens to make sure those areas where boats are being launched that is not safe for swimming, kids that do want to jump there is moved on to spaces that are safe to swim in, where they can jump. So thank you also to staff for being proactive before summer, getting that agreement with the Māori wardens sorted, and it's 7 days a week that they'll be there from noon till 7 p.m.
So just to clarify then, it will appear in enforcement in the future? The harbour master's responsibility is enforcement in that area, not city watchers?
So the harbour master doesn't have a statutory responsibility as it relates to children jumping in front of boats.
I disagree. I've read the what's the central government document he operates under? Maritime, yeah, and I believe it is his direct responsibility, and it's his role to deputise enforcement in that space too. So he could potentially be deputising the City Watch to assist.
Yeah, I can look at that again, but that's not my understanding.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, we move on to our next section, which is our waters, urban waters. So that's page 186 to page 229. Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. Welcome, Mr. Wilson. So we're taking a look at all our waters, underwater, top water, everything. Councillors, questions? Councillor Seymour, you go first.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Page 188 with respect to stormwater. I just want to ask some questions around the consent for the Drainwise project. Were there many submitters, please? It says in the first box under progress, it's been applied and public submissions have closed.
Through the chair, we do have a handful of submissions that we'll be working through on a hearing at this stage by the looks of things. I think it was maybe 26 all up, but I have to go back and check them out.
And do we know when the hearing is going to be, please?
I'll come back to you by the end of the meeting.
Thank you. And so on the same page, it's the growth-related upgrades to the Tarahiru block. And we can all read, I don't repeat what it says, but except that we've done the retained budgets and they've been pushed out to future years as part of the annual plan process. But that's something we've been having quite a few conversations, and the public communities having conversations about our ability to assist the development of housing. So how far has it been pushed out? And I know we'll get to talk about that in the annual plan, but it just seems a bit of a shame that we've needed to push it out when that's something that is critical to building in that area.
Through your worship, the Tarahiru block infrastructure was pushed out in the last annual plan, and that was to accommodate the wastewater treatment plant. So that was part of the work that was deferred by 3 to 4 years to enable the wastewater treatment plant project to be processed faster. So that was done through an annual plan process last year. I think we did that, Pauline. So at the moment, it's sitting in our long-term plan considerations to come back to you. At the moment, it's sitting just outside of this LTP, from my understanding too.
Supplementary, just to refresh our memory on all of that then, it was deferred simply because of its impact on rates, one assumes, because at the end of the day, it's not consequential on the upgrade of the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, more wastewater could go into it and be treated just as the wastewater is now, with the capacity at the moment. But it was the issue of paying for. Is that what I would take from that?
Ms. Foreman.
No, it's part of the, when we were reviewing things, is like we do in the annual plan, what are the projects that will likely proceed in that particular year or not? And these particular projects, we said they were not to a stage where they would be going ahead in those years. It was not dependent on the wastewater treatment plant, moving that forward. It was totally two different decisions, but they actually coincided in that year.
Thank you. So it's worthy of a further conversation when we come back to the annual plan as to its timing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any more questions around urban stormwater, wastewater, water supply, land, rivers, coastal, GDC journeys, solid waste? Page 186, Councillor Akuhata-Brown.
I've been trying to kind of look through the whole report and get my head in the space of climate change, in the sense that we've got all these external reports, NIWA in this space. And I just wanted to know, Mr. Wilson, how does that, how does climate change, I guess, permeate through reports and all of these spheres? Because we're getting a lot more people, you know, asking us, how are we mitigating? What is our role in all these issues? And even with recent storm events around the country and our neighbours right now dealing with it. So yeah, climate change overall, I don't know how we budget for it. But certainly, how are we working that through with all the reporting to all the issues that it connects to, be it coastal erosions, et cetera, et cetera. So it just has been posed to me this week by community people, and so I'm just asking you today, how does that sit in this space?
So through your worship, when we are developing or designing any of the projects that we're undertaking, we're looking to see what climate change impacts we need to take into account. That's set through our long-term plan. So we're still working out of the previous one, which was a metre of sea level rise. So all of our designs for the likes of Waipawa have to be able to take climate change and all of its effects, not just sea level rise, in 100 years' time. So we look over the life of the asset and make sure that it fits in with our projections and what we think the climate will be doing. You don't see it in this report because this is more around how we're tracking against our annual plan to date, but in our design and where you've set in our long-term plan going forward, particularly through our infrastructure strategy, that's where you set, and that's when we adapt our designs and our interventions to make sure they're taking into account climate change and adaptation or mitigation, depending on what it is.
Just do you believe that we have enough resource for this region? You know, I mean, I know the nation is in this space, but for us, I'm just again aware that we have a new government formed now as far as this topic. So can we ask for more resource to help with those projections and thoughts future-wise?
Through your worship, I think climate change is one of those things we'll be working with for a number of years with us as a council, but then also with central government around the multiple billions that climate change is going to cost New Zealand. And we have some big costs that we will have to look at and change in practices over that too. But that's something we'll be working on as we develop up how we're going to respond to climate change with the council.
Councillor Cranston and then Councillor Dowsing.
Yeah, thanks for that. Page 206 on land, rivers and drainage. Capital expenditure budget is overspent and it says it's due to emergency works, Tokomara Bay and Awatiri River. Have those works finished and is there anything else in the pipeline that's going to hit that budget and keep it in the red?
Through your worship, we will be coming back to council for a approval retrospectively for the work that we've done there for unbudgeted capex. So in an emergency situation, we do the work and then we going to have to deficit fund it. For the Awatiri, we are done for now. For Tokomaru though, we have some issues there that we're needing to resolve. So we're working with regulatory around what those interventions look like going forward. So for Tokomaru, we have an issue there with a closed landfill that's been exposed. This is around how much more work we need to do in that space. So we'll bring that paper back in the new year once we have those finalised designs agreed between Lifelines and Environment and Regulatory.
Councillor Dowsing and then Robinson.
Thank you. I think the waste minimisation piece in the solid waste report misses a very recent announcement, which was that we can now recycle plastics number 5 again, right? Which is a great outcome directly from this report, with Councillor Seymour rolling her eyes about the discussion.
Stick to the subject.
This is the subject. There's specifically a point in this.
About rolling eyes, please. Just stick to the subject.
Sorry, I was highlighting that she was being rude while I was talking.
Can we please act like adults? Thank you.
So yes, a great announcement, and hopefully we'll highlight outcomes like that in this report, but I understand that that was very recent. The other piece that I'd like to understand a little bit more is, we've talked about wheelie bins in the past, but moving to a 3-bin recycling system is quite interesting, but I see there's some upcoming reports to council from that Ministry of Environment report. When is that likely to come?
Through your worship, we'll be wrapping those up, and as part of our long-term plan discussions when it comes to our waste management and minimisation plans, so the WMMP. So some of the councillors would have heard me refer to the fact we need to review our WMMP in light of the recycling changes, the waste minimisation levies, and then also looking at how we deliver our waste services going forward. So that'll be coming through in the new year to you around what levers you would like to pull or not when it comes to managing waste in this district.
Thank you.
Councillor Robinson and then Burdett, thank you.
Thank you. As I said, I lost all my notes, but I'm going through trying to find them again. Difficult with big blocks of corridor. So that last topic, that report came in August on the recommendations for standardisation of curbside.
Page.
214, that's the last point Councillor Dowsing spoke about. And my note, you've said here that once completed, this will be brought to council for further review, and you've just told us that it'll be in the new year. I am a little concerned. It's 4 months since that report came in. This is a really urgent issue. You know, we're trucking out 30% green waste out of this region. It's a massive cost. Really want to accentuate the prioritisation of this. That report, as I said, has been out for 4 months. I would have hoped that timeframes would be shorter.
Thank you for that.
I've got several points.
Right, move on to the next one. What page is the next one?
I have to go back because I'm sorry, Madam Chair. It's just that
That's all right.
Doc's lost all my notes. So it's a bit piggly-wiggly. When did the transition of solid waste from livable communities to lifelines occur? Okay, and the only reason I asked that was because on 213 it says, with the transition, a meeting is being arranged with the trust to deal with Pakahu. I was interested again in timeframes and language that says it's going to happen as opposed to something transition's 2 months old and we need to arrange a date, not we're going to be arranging a date.
You finished?
No.
Another one?
Yes. This is very difficult.
Anyone else have got a question while we wait? Councillor Worsnop, we'll come back to you, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Oh, I've got it.
There we go. Yes,
so
please.
Page 194, in relation to AUD for the treated wastewater, it says here that two funding applications were declined. We're looking to reapply to the Endeavour Fund. I'm assuming that's one of the ones that declined us. So why have we only applied to 2 funds? This is a really, really huge opportunity for us, and timeframes are going to be critical on this. So give us a bit of background on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Through your worship, it is around the criteria for the funds and our ability to meet the funding requirements for them. So for the wastewater AUD, it has been difficult to get funds that it directly aligns with because it's feasibility and investigation still. It's not around hard infrastructure, which a lot of the funds are looking for now, particularly the provincial growth funding. A lot of our feedback was premised around this is a feasibility study. We want spades in the ground, so it wasn't something that we were able to put through. The other part is around the simple availability of timing of funding and when we're able to put through to them.
Supplementary, what level of funding are we applying for these feasibility studies?
For memory, it was a $400,000 application to the Provincial Growth Fund and maybe $200,000 to the other one.
It can't be taken out of the whatever the money that we're getting from the regional plan.
Who did I have next? Councillor Worsnop and then Councillor Burdett. Thank you.
Page 205, meters of land drains. What proportion of those do we actively manage? Do we have any idea? And I've got another question.
So through your worship, all of them, so they are routinely checked. So whether that's from simply flying the drone over them to check them, or if there's work that we're actually going out and having a look at as part of them. The largest proportion of those are on the Poverty Bay Flats. So that's where most of our drainage network is, on the Poverty Bay Flats. Then we also have some up at Uawa, Tokomaru and other areas, but the biggest proportion's on the Poverty Bay Flats.
Sorry, in terms of actively managed, I mean, are they being maintained by landowners, are they being maintained by council? Who, monitoring aside, who is, because we're obviously investing a huge amount of money in the stopping, and that's part of the puzzle. Yeah, clearly there's not another branch that also funds the drains, so just trying to make sense of that network.
So through your worship, the drains all have a rating scheme that those landowners who benefit from it take up. So a lot of the Poverty Bay Flats, there are the drainage districts, is what we call them, where the ratepayers there pay a targeted rate that feed into that. When it comes down, so right now we've just gone into spraying season. The team have their spray season that they need to run out to get as many of those done as possible. When I say actively managed, we have to check it at least twice a year as part of our levels of service, which we're more than doing at the moment. But then there's also how much clearance, and we have a team of about 8 that work on just on, we call them the Land Rivers and Coastal team. Most it's around doing the drains.
So my other question was on page 258. So in terms of the RFSs, I understand that the response that we're referring to here, when we say, this is one, this is how many of our responses are within our target. That response is a remedy, I'm guessing, rather like the RFSs benefits, rather than, I guess my thoughts were, do we have a tier, or where do we encompass the fact that they've been responded to, just at least with an explanation as to
the fix.
why it's potentially going to sit there for another year, and whether or not we capture that information. If we do, could we report it? And just again on reporting, can I please advocate for road condition and the unsealed network to also be a measure that we capture, because it's the majority of our road network, and we're just invested an enormous, or still investing a huge amount of money in it. We should probably try and capture some of what that is.
Mr. Wilson.
Through your worship, so in regards to the request for service, so the response times are around when we have acknowledged that we've got it. So with the customer is the first one. When it comes to when the physical works can be undertaken, that's a different, we will look at when it can be scheduled in within the next sort of 3 months. There are fixes that we have that are 18 months to 2 years away. We will leave those in the system, but they aren't over time, and it's left out that long. If it's a major job, we'll go back and say when it's going to be closed out afterwards. So it doesn't disappear from the system. So when we talk about our response times, that's the initial response time. It doesn't mean that the fix has happened. The fix can take up to 18 months, or it can be a no.
So that response is clearly getting back to someone and saying, this is the likely outcome of your RFS. And we routinely do that.
So the standard protocol is at the moment is if a request for service comes in, it lands with the team and it needs to be acknowledged. So the acknowledgement is we've got this. We'll either have to send a team out, which is normally what happens with our request for service. Most of ours go directly to our contractor around something that they can resolve. If it's something they can't, then it comes back in and the customer should be spoken to say, this is the response time frame. We'll come back to you when we know more information. So it's not a one in, one out. It can be multiple contacts regarding an issue.
Feedback would be that's the bit that's the most critical, is less, I mean, yes, it's important to acknowledge the receipt of that query, but definitely the most important thing is clarifying the fact that we do actually have a plan, because it's often perceived that they've acknowledged it and just forgotten about it.
It's the comms.
It totally is, yeah. So, I mean, we don't capture that in our reporting at all. And it's probably the thing that we, well, at least definitely in the rural area that he is most involved. It would be quite good to be able to monitor that somehow.
Thank you for that. Councillors, last question, Mr. Bill Burdett.
Thank you, and David has partly answered this one. If you go to page 186, we do this to protect people, dwellings, private property and public areas from flooding by managing the collection and disposal of stormwater in a way that protects the environment and public health. In the case, David, of where we put our stormwater onto a private property and then it comes back onto our roads and down through drains, what's the legal position about making landowners clean their drains too? I've had a fair bashing over this bit of late.
Through your worship, if it's coming into our public network or it's something that somebody's done within our network, then we have some controls around that. If it's becoming an issue where stormwater is going from one property onto another, that'll be something for the RMA. So it'll be around what's happening and is that causing an issue exacerbating onto somebody else's property, and there'll be something for the regulatory team.
Supplementary to that, Madam Chair, where we have properties that have had no maintenance and the stormwater comes out on our roads and bloody near ruins them, how do we rectify that legally? Can we use some enforcement to ensure that those drains are cleaned?
Ms. Montgomery.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we can. We just need to know about where it is and then we'll send our investigators up.
Fantastic. Well, thanks a lot. Everyone will be glad to hear that we are now going to break for a cup of tea. And then afterwards, so it is 10:30 now. Afterwards, so we come back at 10:45. I will invite Ben and Rebecca with a much anticipated revaluation update to us. So they'll do a presentation to us. And I invite you to join us for a cup of tea. And at 10:45, you can join me at the front. We'll finish your presentation and questions. And councillors, then we'll cover the next 45 pages of this report. Thanks a lot. Have a nice cup of tea. they do our 3 yearly revaluations for us. And this is hot off the press, well, not even off the press. This is the first we'll hear from this. So we will leave it to you. It's about a 15-minute presentation. So if everyone can just hang on to their questions, because I can already see everyone will have to have a question or two. If we can just allow them to go through their presentation, and then we can ask our questions. So the floor is yours. Welcome. You can sit, relax.
Sit, relax.
Absolutely. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for inviting us here today. So we'll just go through the key changes from last time. Obviously, COVID-19 is the biggest. We're all ready to go 1st July, but got advised to hold off to 1st of September. That actually proved very tricky because we weren't aware that the market, everyone was saying the market will stabilise or maybe drop off. But the residential market started going up when we came out of lockdown. So it made our job pretty tricky, just trying to really find that date. So that's probably the main change. We've also got the horticulture scene, we've got irrigation. We're capturing sort of 150 properties there. We've got category changes. We always got to review those every reval. I think last time we changed a lot to arable to horticulture. That caused a bit of drama around. So yeah, there's no changes this time. For the last probably 12 months, we've been involved with the Valuer General in the new methodology for valuation of kiwifruit orchards. So it's actually Gisborne Council's the first council to roll this out. So it's unlocking at least 200 million to your rateable base, and that will just keep going up. And linking with the residential market movement, no one, even last year, we didn't really predict it, but the section prices have just gone through the roof. You look in Trade Me, there's one section you could probably buy. So that's probably the biggest trend, and it's when we audited, they look at it and go, "What's going on here?" 100%. It's a pretty crazy movement. And then lastly, the new Omega 2 guidance that's made the reductions increase. So we've had to go through 3,500 properties there and redo all those. So that's been going on for a while. So this will be one of the first councils to roll this out. Go into the overview. See that, but I can send this. Have you got the present? Yeah, send it all to you. But basically, just lets you know the sort of movements per category. And you can sort of see the city. It's all quite at least 65% movement, but it's all the lower value properties have moved higher, so it's quite varied all over it. See the next one.
The next slide.
Yeah, no, quite to see. It might be easy just to.
The main summary from that bottom right one is like Ben said, the lower suburbs range between a 70 to 80% increase. And Tahapara as well.
Yeah, and I'll definitely send this around
Afterwards.
Yes. Yeah, but it's yes. And then this is probably the best sort of graph. This is the whole district, so it's from Hicks Bay right to Muriwa. So when we look at the residential, that's the whole district, and you can see there it's a pretty big increase. And then you move down industrials, just a shortage of land, it's really high as well. Horticulture, that's if we take out the kiwifruit properties, that probably comes back to about 60%. So it's actually a bit skewed there, the horticulture, based on all the kiwifruit.
What's an example of an apple?
Yeah, that's sort of a school or reserve or zoning, recreational sort of, might be the Olympic pool, halls, churches. That's might be lots of them non-rated probably.
Before we leave this slide,
can
I just ask how we account for those is a forest, but the prevalence for pastoral land to be set by the forestry price is a new phenomenon. So how do you account for that in the forestry interest that's going to reach? That's the price rise, right? How do we capture that? Because once they're sold, they're in trips.
Yeah, so there's about 4 properties that we've changed, very aware of, 4 properties that have, and yeah, they're sort of very close to pastoral levels.
Well, that probably doesn't reflect the fact that there's going to be probably at least another 4 or 5, 10 more forestry. Not to by the limit.
Yeah, exactly. That was the hardest thing we had. We talked with the Value General a few months ago, and that was happening all around Wairua and everywhere. And luckily, because we were worried, because if that happened, you could say every pastoral category would change to forestry because that's the highest value. And we were like, oh no, what's going to happen then? We've got Panika and Mangahe sold to pastoral, top of it. So we're sort of coming in and saying the pastoral category, the values are quite close, and that's where we're sort of setting it at a pastoral level for all the pastoral properties. And you might go to Wairua or another district, and the forestry values would be a lot higher. But you'll find in Gisborne, they're actually quite close, depending on the average farm would be pretty close. Because
there's still a disparity between the land as its use rather than its potential use. So the sale from pastoral to forestry happens at the pastoral farm level. Foresters will match it or better it. Once it's in trees, it transacts at the forestry level.
Yeah.
So you've got this weird thing, dynamic happening that I don't know how.
No, you're right. Yeah. No, that's a good question, because once the trees are all planted and it grows, it actually
drops
exactly the land value goes down, and all that extra value goes into the carbon, into the tree value. So yeah, so if you've got a $10 million farm that goes into trees, yeah, the value will just drop down over time. Yeah, luckily, like I said, there's only 4 at the moment that we've changed from pastoral to forestry that are going with trees. But yeah, it was Warwick signed last year. These are nice sort of graphs that show the sort of movement through category, total capital value. Probably the most obvious is the residential moving up. So it's sort of gone up. But, the pastoral values have gone down a bit, so the residential share has gotten bigger.
Key residential and lifestyle trends. The residential market's extremely buoyant and is, as Ben mentioned, exceeding everyone's expectations post-COVID. We have a very tight supply in New Zealand with only approximately 4% of our total property transacting in the marketplace. And some properties are now selling for more than if you could build that as well, because the supply is so limited. Currently, average, or as of the 1st of September, the rating date, the city average was around 500,000, and but that's moved beyond that now. And in comparison to other provincial towns, they've recorded 50% movements over the last 3-year period. We're looking at about 65, 70. And Gisborne has historically been considered affordable, and that's certainly a concern in terms of going forward if this trend continues.
Because you just said, I think, if I heard correctly, that residential average is now at 500, but that second bullet point says it's 460.
Yes, so 460 is when you take into account right up to Hicks Bay, all of the coast.
Right.
So if you concentrate on just the town, everyone's sort of
around the 500.
Yeah. So you've sort of got 10,000 rating assessments, and
So that's a district-wide average, which is what that says, but you're talking about now the city-wide average is the over 500.
It'd be around 500, yeah, but now, like, I think it's, you know, we strike the 1st of September, so it's, as you can see, the next graphic. You can sort of see 2017, sort of perhaps the side there against the rating value, so it's sort of just rising up. Then, you know, it was only from early 2019, it's really just shot up. So that's, you know, it's a 40% movement in 1 year, which is, you know, pretty worrying. Yeah, massive movement. And you can sort of see it coming out of lockdown, it's actually stepping up, and that's August. So I don't want to put up October because it's you know, it's going up. Just want to mention, yeah, definitely we've had a lot of input with the council with this, and we've used this system for the mapping, and we all, you know, think it must be the best in New Zealand. It's amazing technology there. It's all free to use, and you mark plotted all the values, so it's really good for consistency. You know, rating's all about that. So it's great to just check sort of how everything's moved.
So can every person go and check on that map?
Well, that map's
Was it only specialised?
Specialised at the moment. There could be
I want to
something.
go and check.
But that could be, yeah, you could definitely, once it's signed off the values, we could load up.
We use it as a tool to share with our values.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. You've got probably about 20 different scenarios, but yeah, the capital value movement is sort of darker it is, it sort of goes up higher the movement. Or the red is obviously, yeah, pretty high movement land value there. And yeah, adopted, you know, it's sort of around the river there, so it's, the values are a bit higher there. But you can sort of see, you know, we don't just look at a suburb and chuck 30% on it. Every area, depending on what property type, is different percentage. Like you can see Tabahiru Crescent in the blue there, and that's what they might have got 95% movement compared to the average of 70, 65. So it's all kind of it's all dependent. Yeah, it's all different.
And in terms of key commercial trends, commercial's separated into commercial, which includes retail, office, and then you've got your industrial. So industrial is looking at about 72% movement. That's been really strong in Gisborne, and 33% for the other commercial sector. And we've seen the heavy industrial demand grow extremely strongly, with 100% increase in land value, illustrated by the Timunga Aerodrome Road subdivision that's taken place, and I think that's all sold. Yeah. And yeah, definitely prime industrial has been the strongest grower for the commercial sector, with yes, secondary retail losing out in the main city centre, especially post-COVID with the travel centres that closed.
Retail, yeah. So it's moved, yeah, real mix. That commercial is so mixed today. It's sort of earthquake-prone buildings. They're all looked at differently. Yeah. Yeah, there is sort of a bit of a different differential. Like if you've got two buildings side by side, one's vacant, we have to look at an average occupancy. Yeah, so it might slightly. Yeah, but if it needs, yeah, if it's old, yeah. This one, yeah, this is you know, gone the last few years. We've had over 100 hectares from the Bay of Tinny planted. So it's a huge trend there. You know, they've got these millions of dollars pack houses in Te Puke. They need to start early because of the machinery, so they buy up land in Gisborne for this. So you know, you're looking at $800,000 a hectare. over $1 million per hectare. They look at 200 to 300% increase in values. Also a lot of apples that have been planted too. But the key thing out of that is I think for the horticulture component, last time in 2017 we had 135 million. We work out for the council every July. This is the component. And I've mentioned here it's looking like $500 million this time, next time around.
So what that would mean is that the value of the remission that we do for horticulture is going to increase significantly for that because of the increase in the value of the kiwi fruit.
Just in the last weeks, we've known there's another 50 hectares going in. So it's the only thing stopping them is water. So if they can get water.
That's the question.
Yeah.
All those values, sorry,
Oh, yeah.
all those new valuations, you've taken into consideration the water issue?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've gone for about 150 each individual. So each individual property is awareness. Yeah. So it's big goal going through the life.
How are you capturing the fact that there's allocation with that property, given that people are inclined to trade it a little bit?
Yeah, we'll just have to keep.
Is it possible?
Yeah, well, that's the hard thing. Hopefully, we don't get. I've heard of people do trading it. Hopefully, that sort of stops. But we just have to get a list from the council regularly and update it. And that's the only way to keep hold of it, really. And most, lots of it is tied to the permanent kiwi fruit, so it's sort of easy. But yes, it's pretty complicated. And we work out, like it might be sort of the value difference of about 30,000 a hectare. And moving on to pastoral. It's just been a real lack of sales at present, but values are still pretty stable. And like I mentioned, the greenfield land is underpinning a lot of the values. So at the moment it makes it hard for value. You've got to do two methods, looking at forestry and pastoral. Medium sale prices are close to about 10 grand, 1,000. There's a graph on the next page showing that. You can sort of see the every reval 2011, 2014, 2017, and then all of a sudden just stepped up. But it's sort of, in the last year, we can't really draw a conclusion this year because we've only got sort of 2-3 sales. You can see it's, it's never, I don't think it's ever had 2 sales in November already. It's sort of, but it's still hovering around that 10 grand. Oh, sort of around 1,000 to 1,1.
Can I just ask anyone who's asking a question, please use your microphone.
Madam Chair, can I just query these knowledgeable people? Even you're talking a 35% increase across the district, even the hard hill country blocks.
You remember it's all averages?
Yes, I understand that perfectly, but you can't tell me acreage on the flat equates to something that's right up in the hinterland.
Yeah, it all might range from 10% to 50%. But we've looked at every location like that, and all ineffective area. So we take all that out, and people ring up all the time and say more erosion, more scrub, and we can correct it. We can do that anytime. I think the key thing is this is council-owned data here. So technically you own all the breakouts for every real property, and it's definitely some of the best information in New Zealand. It's just hidden behind the scenes, and you can dive into it. And I think you're doing a bit of work with forestry, so you can actually get the value of that component, or the flat land, or the area in bush. So that's same for horticulture as well. We can get that out too.
So the information on that previous slide is the database that gives our council revaluation and our rates information database a very, very high rating in New Zealand. We're one of the top in the country for our rural data. And this was one of the things that we have to protect when we go out on the market for a new valuation contractor. It was one of the things highlighted to us by the Valuer General, that that was the information that we need to protect and is valued highest.
Forestry is actually the lowest, the lowest movement. And you know, there's strong demand from overseas investors, but hopefully the government policy might tighten up a bit. But yeah, it's pretty much, you know, as I mentioned, it's a tree value and carbon, which is not right in the rating value, so it's sort of a hard one to really come to. Yeah. And then we move on to.
In terms of the end of the reval process, you have what happens if you don't agree with your rates. You can obviously object, and certainly if you do have any queries, that's definitely what we'd recommend as well. It is a mass appraisal. It's something that we don't see the inside of properties, for example, for residential properties, and the money that you've spent on improvements. We just don't have access to that. So you have 30 days to lodge an objection with council, and the information on how to go about that is on the back of the notice of valuation, and that's online or physical copy. So the important dates for that, the owner's notices are posted 11th of December. The last day for lodging an objection is the 29th of January. And as we've mentioned, the date of valuation was a snapshot in time, the market value as of the 1st of September.
Wow, thanks a lot for that. Now I will open the floor for some questions. Mr. Grant.
That last one's probably going to need a lot of communication and explanation out in the public, because even this morning there was a headline, month on month valuations are going through the roof. So when we're looking at the 1st of September and then them coming out in December, a lot of those are going to be well outdated at that point.
Exactly,
but there needs to be communication out in the public that, hey, this is what it is, or else you're just going to be inundated with people arguing that the valuation's wrong. When you do that value, the value of 100% up on land value, how does the improvement value look in that terms as a percentage? Is that well less than, how do you work those out? It is the land value that's driving it.
Yeah, driving it 100%. Yeah, the improvements, just on my head, it might have gone up 40, 50% in areas. But then you've got subdivision potential as well. Bigger sites, the houses in the middle. But yeah, the improvements have gone up a lot too, to get to that 60, 70% movement. And then like Beck said as well, some of the sales we're seeing are actually higher than the building costs, which you know, it doesn't make too much sense. But no, we sort of concentrate on capital value and land value, and the improvement sort of moves how it moves. It's quite, you can't really pin it down exactly.
Councillor Whare, oh sorry, you go first, Rebecca.
I was just going to say that in response to the first part of your question, we actually send out a flyer that goes with the notices, and we will be sitting with Ben on Friday to go over that, so the information about the trends will be in a flyer that goes out with the notices.
Councillor Whare, hang on.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I'm happy to move the report. Thank you very much, Fiona, for bringing this to the table. So thank you, Rebecca and Ben, for providing the presentation. I found it really, really helpful. One thing that I wanted to ask you guys about, but it might be collectively answered, because there's always been this gap, and you've alluded to the fact there's always been this gap between our rating valuation and an actual registered valuation. Are we talking about just applying the rates of improvement generally across the figures that we already have? in our rating database. Is that what we're talking about here in terms of the lifting of values?
So what happens is we get a file from Lewis and Wright, which is the new values for the whole district. So we actually put a whole new set of data over the top of what we've got. We don't go through and adjust it up. What Rebecca and Ben have provided is a comparison to what it was in 2017 to now.
But you would capture building consents, and you know, if you renovate, we look at a lot of properties too that haven't sold. We look at every sale, but yeah, there'll be lots of hidden properties that we wouldn't know about that have you know, been renovated. But it's a mass appraisal, so we try to do you know, 23,000 properties, and then we have the objection process, and that sorts out a lot as well.
And the objection process, I do want to say, is quite straightforward. You fill in forms, someone come and visit your property, and you can show them the improvement. Obviously, you can't just say, I think my house is worth more or less. You need to show what you have done or what might not have been picked up. But it's a relatively straightforward process where you then talk a little bit and they send an updated or adjusted or not piece of paper to you.
So, sorry, supplement you, because I do think of when our last rating valuations occurred, and it was also during a very hot market as well. So a lot of the valuations that were applied to our properties in Gisborne, the market cooled down shortly thereafter, and then we had these overvalued properties and all of these. And I wasn't a councillor at the time, but I was definitely part of the ratepayer base that was going, my house is not worth this much according to the council, and there were heaps of whānau out there. So that's why I asked about that gap between kind of where the market is at the moment, because you're right, the market is crazy, and our figure, because our figure for council is usually kind of more on the conservative end. That's the reason why I bring that part up. Do you guys have any response in regards to that?
We're definitely on all these sales that happen, ones have been renovated, you know, all the media says, oh, it's gone up 100%. But if you dive into it, it's actually had a new kitchen bathroom. So we isolate all those sales that have been renovated and bring it down to a normal sort of level. So that's a job where we have to adjust all the sales. So we don't just say, you know, the real estates are going up 180%. We actually bring it down to keep it on a fair basis. But again, like we will probably get objections where people, normally you get them wanting it up, but I think this time around with the big movements, people will want it down.
Interesting. Councillor Seymour. Microphone.
My question is around the key forestry trend statement, and if you're going to be working that up. And it's the issue around the first time in several years, there's been forestry re-entered the pastoral market, and Councillor Woolsnop's asked about it already, and you've alluded to the fact that the most recent property sales in our district, I'm not talking about Wairoa, have tended to stay in pastoral farming. So I just think that when you come to publish that, maybe that just needs modifying, because I can't think, and I keep a close eye on the market, that there's been that much sale of pastoral land and forestry in the Gisborne district.
Thank you for that. Last few questions. Councillor Akuata-Brown and then Councillor Woolsnop, and then we're going to wrap up.
Apologies for not using my microphone before, but it's on now. I just wanted to ask this question for myself to get my head in this space. A residential property in a commercial zone, what is it valued on? Commercial zone? Is it on the zoning?
Yeah, it's all on the zoning, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, thank you. Last question, Councillor Woolsnop.
My question was just around that period where you can object and get it amended. Is that only apply ever to the month after the valuations notified, so that you've got to wait till the next one, which is in the book?
Yeah, but I also got to say, with us being a local company, you know, if you come in and say this property's all got erosion or it's in trees or whatever, we're happy about doing adjustments throughout that 3-year time.
So what happens is, as a result of the general revaluation, the no,
If it's an,
no,
if it's
a
an error,
finite period,
if
it's a set
yeah,
process.
if it's
It's a
wrong,
set
like
process.
if it's,
If it's hugely wrong, then we would look at reviewing it.
Yep.
And they can request a valuation. But there's also like the process to, like the legal process, like you can go to the appeal court if you disagree. So it's more than just the objection process in that month. It can go further than that if there's a disagreement.
Thank you. 1 second, Councillor Robinson. Quick, smart.
So the residential values across the region have gone up by X percentage. How does that factor in, Fiona, into our rates take? Because if the rates base is more valued, the percentage of rates increases. And I haven't ever seen a figure to flow through to actually what that means in real dollars. Is that something that you think?
So if you've got different areas within the city that move at different rates, so for example, if Te Hara moved at a different rate to Whakaupiko, then the rates would increase, say, slightly in Whakaupiko if that was higher, but if it was higher in the Te Hara area, then they would get a slight increase. If all the residential properties moved at the same rate, then there would be virtually no increase, no change. But within the city, we've got ups and downs, so you will get some that change.
Well, thanks a lot. Pauline.
So just with that, on average, just under 50%. If yours is above that, you expect a slight incidence of rates change to you. If you're below that, you'll have incidents that changed away from you. So that's kind of what the threshold.
Hey, Ben and Rebecca, thank you so much for coming. The presentation has already been emailed through to councillors, so you can play around with it. Any questions, you can come back to Fiona, and if there's stuff that she cannot answer, she'll come back to you. But hey, thanks a lot for coming in today. Councillor Cranston, far out.
Just a quick one. Can you remind me of the disputed time period? I'm just
End of Jan.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I was just
So it's in that presentation.
Concerned about going.
And we will make sure that message is clear to the public, also the process, that if they do want to object, and it's the same as every other year, 3 years. Yep.
and yeah, I just want to lastly say, yeah, thanks a lot for this opportunity. And last year we went out for tender, and 90% of the councils go with the only other provider, and you've gone with a local company. And I just want to say that's thanks a lot for that, and we think the values will be a lot more robust.
Thank you, Ben. We'd love to support local. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, councillors, all in favour? Contrary, carried. So what we're going to do now, we've got about 40 minutes to, not that I'm asking you to fill the full 40 minutes with questions. What I'm saying is that we do have more questions that we can ask, but around 12 o'clock I need to shoot away. So let me open my notes. We will move to page 230, which is the cultural activities, recreation and amenity. That's page 230 to 244. Thank you. Mr. White, welcome to the table. So any questions around our library, navigations, cultural activities? If there are no questions, we move on to our next section, which is customer engagement, page 245 to 258. Thank you, Mr. White. Customer engagement, strategic planning. Okay, councillors, any questions on customer engagement, 245 to 258? If not, I move us on to our next section, which is 259 to 270, that's governance and support services, which is governance and democracy and support services, 259. To 70. Did Councillor Cranston put his hand up? Thank you, sir. Mr. Beatty, welcome to the table.
Support services operating revenue 729 under budget, explained as being a timing issue. Is the timing issue going to sort out the whole 729 or page 265? Most of the timing issues explained as being dividends income. I just wondered whether it was going to take care of the whole 729.
So in terms of that, yes, it's full forecasted to be on track by year end. So it's just the timing of whether when we receive our dividend, it's in the last quarter of the year. And so that means it would come back on track. At the moment, it's tracking to that. Dividends are forecasted to be 1.8 million for a full year. So most of that is a timing, yeah, and some of it's, yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions in regards to page 250? Councillor Dowsing, thank you.
Just a quick correction on Eastland Community Trust listed in there. I only just noticed that. No, it just states Eastland Community Trust.
Thank you. Please correct that. Okay, we move on to our commercial. Councillor Robinson. 266.
Talks about the enterprise solution facing councils to systems. I find any maps attached to this, and alarm bells that are and also 268, which talks about the information services in the first box there, the enterprise solution project mentioning the progress on planning as a focus on ensuring new systems. That is silly. So when I'm reading that the progress of this enterprise solution, it's a transformative process, but we haven't selected the new system yet. Is it, and how much money is going into this hole? Oh, sorry.
First of all, it's not a hole.
It's not a hole.
So I'll just clarify that. It is a significant piece of work, mostly around change management, relates to Ozone, which is our core piece of software infrastructure that helps our business tick over. We are at the beginning, for want of a better term, of a 4 to 5 year project associated with the replacement. It relates to our financial systems, rates, HR systems, so on and so forth. It's about 5 mil in total, spread across several financial years, and it's a phased project. So we're at the beginning of the project in terms of generating a whole pile of user stories across the organisation and working with key stakeholders, and then we'll have to select a successful tenderer to implement a new system for us. There's only several companies capable of actually doing this. So we're just working through with a consultant at the moment as to an RFP process associated with it. We hope to tender the project early in the new year, if not sooner.
So, sorry, so Enterprise Solution, is that the name given to the project? It's not the software?
No, that's the name given to the project. Enterprise Solutions, it's all encompassing. It's got all our resource consents modules in it, parking, dog control, customer service.
And will the TRMA review, et cetera, the district plan review, will that impact upon this as it's going to be changing a significant system?
No.
Okay, cool.
Any more questions in regards to democracy? If not, thank you, Mr. Beatty. We'll move on to commercial operations. That's our last 4 pages, page 271 to 274. Thank you, Ms. Foreman. Any questions in regards to our commercial operations? Councillor Worsnop.
Thank you. Just on Just with regards to the first quarter additional revenue of $139,000 from 81 hectares of harvest area, that seems really tiny relative to the harvest area. Is that why so little revenue? It's not even $2,000 a hectare.
It's our share, so it's our, yeah, it's the share that is with regards to the, yeah.
Okay. Any more questions in regards to the last few pages? Thank you, Councillor Dowsing, seconded by Councillor Wharehinga. If there are no more questions, I put it to the floor. All in favour? Contrary? Carried. Have I missed anything? I think we are all finished for the day. We've done our presentation, we've done the museum, so I declare this meeting closed. Thank you for coming in early today, and we will see you at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you to Alison Wynn.